back to Two Trees in a Pod with Alyssa and Sam, where we talk about all things life and relationships and tie it back to faith. Today we are excited to talk about self-love. Let's get into it. Alright, before we get into the episode, we are going to give an update on our challenge from last week. If you listened to last week's episode, you would know our challenge was to initiate contact with a friend, which sounds so sad that we had to make a challenge for it, but you know, life gets busy and you just don't think about those things. So our challenge was to reach out to at least one friend to have a hangout or get coffee or something. So Sam, how did that go for you?
It went great for me. We actually hung out with a couple friends yesterday. He asked me to be a groomsman. I asked him to be a groomsman. So we're pretty close and I was excited we got to get a meal with them. It didn't bug me too much to reach out to him. I haven't seen him in a while and I was looking forward to getting a meal and I wanted to tell him he was a groomsman. I know it was a lot harder for you to reach out to someone, so why don't you tell me about how your challenge went?
Well, it wasn't hard, actually, and I think that was something that I learned, because I feel like I get so high stress about, like, not hosting, but, like, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and so I wanted to, like, make sure my hangout was perfect or whatever. So I invited a couple younger teammates over and we had dinner, we baked cookies, we caught up. It was like a good 2 hours and it was really fun. We played a game and I'm so glad I did it. And more people, I left it as like a bit of an open invite to the freshman class and more of them came than I thought. I only thought 2 of them were going to come and I had 4 that came. So I was so excited and I was so glad that I did it and I was so glad that it worked out. And to think I would have just been like, I don't know, like getting ahead on homework or something stupid, like that doesn't matter in the long.
Yeah, homework doesn't matter. You heard it here first.
In the grand scheme of things, like we talk about storing up treasures on earth versus on heaven, and I feel like investing in your relationships on earth is storing up treasures in heaven, whereas me getting a 98 on an assignment versus a 92 is storing up treasures on earth. So that was our little mini update, and we would love to hear about your update on the challenge if you want to leave it in the Q&A if you're on Spotify, or if you want to comment or DM us or just text us. All of you listening have our phone numbers, so we would love to hear how your challenge went if you chose to partake. But anyways, transitioning away from loving your friends. Today we're going to talk about loving yourself, and we felt like this was the perfect cap on the Agape Love February series, because self-love can be such a beautiful thing and it's actually biblical when you get to its root, but I feel like the world has kind of put a different type of spin on it that can almost be a little toxic and kind of sink its little teeth into other areas of your life. And obviously loving yourself is not a bad thing. That is not where we're going with this. But talking a little bit about the worldview on self-love, which, again, is not a bad thing. It's about accepting and embracing who you are. This is just like the secular proposal for loving yourself, right? Embracing a life without criticism, shame, guilt, or doubt. And Sam, do you have any experiences with the worldview on self-love?
I think the worldview on self-love comes from a lot of justification, and that justification isn't inherently negative. It's people being proud of who they are, people representing who they are. I think it gets a little bit twisted from where true self-love is. True self-love is respecting yourself, caring for yourself, doing things that are truly good for you. So you can say you're showing self-love by having a relaxing weekend and going out, drinking, having fun at the bars. True self-love in that scenario is not destroying your body, not doing things that harm you, and truly loving yourself. So I do think the secular version of self-love has been twisted into self-gratification as opposed to true self-love, because love is not, and in most cases, is not immediate. It's not quick gratification. It's not fast acting, but it's a constant, steady process of doing the right thing and taking care of yourself and truly loving yourself.
Sure, yeah. And I think another perspective of the worldview on self-love is like putting yourself first and kind of rejecting criticism. You know what I mean? And that's not necessarily biblical. So the Bible tells us not to judge others because the same way that we judge others, those same judgments are going to be imposed upon us when our time comes. So just a little, may not want to judge other people because you'll be judged the same way. I know I struggle with that. But I feel like the worldview of self-love does have that only God can judge me type of like motto way of living, which yes, is true, only God can judge you. However, we are called to kind of like call each other out on sin and not in a judgmental way. But self-love in the worldview context can kind of ignore the fact that we do make mistakes, and making mistakes is just a part of the human condition. We're all going to fall short of the glory of God at some point in our lives, probably not just at one point. And the worldview of self-love is like, you are like a god, basically. Treat yourself like you are a god because you are an incredible being, whatever, which everybody is incredible in their own ways. But when you kind of put yourself in that type of idol stance, you can really be doing yourself more harm than good because you're not acknowledging the ways that you fall short, I guess. And I feel like I can fall victim of this sometimes when like in like a certain area where I think I'm really, really good at something, and then somebody wants to offer me advice and I'm like, just shut up. So, and that's not helpful, you know, because having that type of attitude, like, I know everything, like, don't tell me anything, it's not constructive. I'm only hurting myself and my relationship with that other person by having that type of attitude, I guess. So, any final thoughts on the world's view on self-love?
I completely agree with that. I think self-love in a secular today context is definitely trying to do the best for yourself, but I think it comes through justification and not through action.
It's walking a fine line of pride.
Exactly. It's only I can judge me. Well, that's correct. Other people shouldn't be judging you, but you're also aware that some actions you may be doing are not the best actions, and that self-judgment comes in. And I think sometimes that gets masked as self-love to justify actions that aren't truly best for you.
Right, I agree. So, as Christians, we're called to a different kind of self-love because we're children of God and we make mistakes. We sin, we have regrets, we hurt, and we have hurt other people. And it's not a betrayal of yourself to acknowledge the areas that you fall short and to try to take steps to change. I would argue that it's an act of self-love, actually, to try and better yourself. And the Bible itself does talk about self-love, and it says, of course, negative and positive things. The negative things being really in the context of pride. Here we go, we can hop into 2 Timothy 3:2. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, and not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen, and conceited. You get it, right? Like, it's acknowledging that people will have these traits that are negative, and that's just a part of the human condition. But then shifting it to Romans 13:9, for the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are all summed up in this word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now that's a little tricky, huh? Because some Christian denominations preach that self-love is completely anti-biblical and that you shouldn't really engage in it because it's idolatry, it's prideful, whatever. But how are you supposed to love your neighbor as yourself if you don't love yourself?
I think that's exactly the reason that these Christian denominations are saying self-love is against the Bible is because they're using the secular term of self-love, which is these immediate gratifications, justifications of actions that aren't truly in your best benefit.
Pride, too.
Exactly. Oh, nobody can judge me, only God. Self-love and using that to justify actions that aren't the best. Well, in that case, those Christians, they shouldn't be judging, but from a biblical standpoint, that's not self-love. So when it says love your neighbor as yourself, that truly means that you are caring for them the way you should be caring for yourself, not how you are caring for yourself necessarily.
And you're supposed to agape everyone, right? Including your neighbor. And we talked a lot about what agape is. It's sacrificial love. It's not self-serving, which is kind of interesting because if we're supposed to also agape ourselves and it's not, quote, self-serving, how can that coexist if you're supposed to love yourself but not out of a way that serves yourself?
When everyone's made in the image of God, you're meant to be taking care of that. That self-love is not for yourself. It's for God because you're so grateful for what he's given you.
You're like taking care of yourself as if you're a temple of the Holy Spirit because you are.
Exactly.
And C.S. Lewis, actually, we love C.S. Lewis. He makes a good point about self-love. I'll read his quote. How do we love ourselves? Oftentimes, we think ourselves as terrible people and we are disgusted with ourselves. We wish that we were not like this. We wish that we could undo what was wrong and be the kind of person that would have not done the wrong in the first place. Then we take action to become that kind of person. That's how we are to love others, as I can best explain it. Also, remember, humility is not necessarily thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. So I kind of like that little thing at the end there. Shifting from, like, loving yourself doesn't mean that you're constantly thinking of yourself all day, every day, and like, how can I put myself first here? Like, da-da-da-da-da. Loving yourself could literally mean thinking of yourself less. And I think we can get into kind of like some healthy forms of self-love here. For me, I'm going to be a little superficial here. I have recently been really struggling with acne due to like some hormonal changes, and it has kind of been something that has been hard not to focus on because like you look in the mirror every day and you see it and you're like, ugh, like I didn't want to wear makeup today, but now I have to wear makeup. Like, you know, it's a whole thing. But I've found that like my best form of like treating that kind of like self-deprecation has been just not thinking about it at all. Like the times that I feel like I, quote, love myself best are the times that I'm thinking about myself the least.
And that's not neglecting yourself. That's not trying to brush things, you know, under the rug and just ignore what's happening. It's realizing that this isn't in my control right now. This isn't me. This is just something that's happening.
Yeah, and it's more like a self-neutrality. Like, it's not like I have this horrible acne. It's just, I have acne. This is just something that's happening. And while I wish it wasn't happening, it just is what it is kind of attitude. And I feel like that's allowed me to have more... Obviously, there's days that, like, aren't very great with it mentally, but, like, the days that I'm able to just be neutral about it, like, I've really liked that. Like, that's something I'd take out of, like, I guess not the body positivity movement, like, the body neutrality movement. I've always much more identified with the body neutrality type of thing compared to the body positivity, because I feel like the positivity side of things is, like, I am awesome, I am this, I am blah, 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 like, I am this superior, like, I am great. And it's not bad to think of yourself in a positive light, not at all. But when you're more neutral with it, it's like, it's not, I have a great body, it's, I have a body. And thinking of it from that perspective, I think is a lot different and enables you to not have certain aspects of your appearance be the number one thing you're thinking of all the time.
I think that mentality goes hand in hand with just kind of our current day culture. You need to be on this side or that side. You need to think good or bad. You need to think X or Y. There really isn't much room left for a neutral standpoint. So it's a foreign concept to say, oh, this is just my skin right now. This is okay. Or, oh, I don't align with this or that party. It's, okay, these are just things that be, and that's okay. You don't have to have a strong opinion one way or the other. And in a self-love context, you don't need to be overly positive about every single thing or justify everything. And you also don't need to belittle yourself. That's C.S. Lewis quote again. Humility is not necessarily thinking less of yourself, putting yourself on that lower level, but it's thinking of yourself less. You're not putting yourself at the forefront of every single thought. You're not making yourself the main character of every single second. You're making God the main character, and because you're trying to follow.
When you have those super high highs of self-love and like you're like, wow, I'm on top of the world. I'm a rock star. I'm looking good. I'm feeling good. I am good. Those super high highs come with the contrast of the super low lows. So we talk about this a lot in volleyball. Like, volleyball is a game of momentum, and you can have you could really dig yourself a hole really fast, or you could go on a really good run. Say you go on a 5-point run, but then you lose 7 points, So your highs are really, really high, but then your lows are also very, very low. And that's not the highest success rate. That's not the best strategy to win a match or to have a good season, to have all those highs and then have all those lows. So finding something more, I'm playing with my hands right now. I'm being visual, but we're not recording visually. To have those super high highs and those super low lows, and to find a place where the highs aren't as high will also make the lows not as low. And so you're bringing it into a more neutral area. So you do have those days where you feel super good, but then the days that you feel bad, you don't feel as bad because you're bringing down your self-inflation and not being as prideful by effect. You will not have those days of depression and self-love.
I wish you guys could see all the hand motion Alice is using.
I know. Sam has rubbed off on me in that way because he's Italian and a very, very, do you call it hand talker? You are
emotive.
You're emotive, yeah. And I never really was like that, but now when I talk, I'm throwing my hands everywhere. But you get what I mean. And any athlete definitely gets what I'm meaning. You're trying to not have your peaks be as peaky and your valleys be as valley-y. You're trying to level off and find that good, steady consistency. Because, I don't know, it's just, I've seen it work in volleyball, so why wouldn't it work in self-love?
And with that consistency kind of comes peace, because you feel and you know that you're not really in control of everything. And for a lot of people, that's a terrifying concept. I was agnostic for the first 24 years of my life. Not being in control was one of the most terrifying things, because I thought self-love was doing everything I possibly could to make my life the best it could be. And that would revolve around controlling everything and making everything, fit the reality that I saw fit. Whereas true self-love was not putting the burden of all these things out of my control on myself, and knowing that there was something more taking care of me and being okay, and giving up sort of that control. And that's not saying I'm just, okay, well, wherever things take me, I'm just going to go along. It's a acknowledgement that I'm working to do the best I can, but ultimately I can't control everything. And not only is that okay, but it's relieving. It's a baseline set of peace of, I'm always going to be trying to do the right thing, and it's always going to be okay. So self-love is acknowledging that I'm trying my best. I'll continue to try my best, and not to justify bad actions by my wants.
We've talked a lot about the negative side of self-love, and I think that now would be a great time to shift into some healthy ways that you can love yourself that aren't against the Bible, that aren't prideful, or that aren't harmful to yourself. And Sam, what are some healthy ways, some good, neutral ways that you are able to show self-love? And if you talk about the dishes, I'm going to stop the recording.
Well, the dishes... So,
okay, here we go. This has been Sam's favorite analogy lately.
I mean, something as small as, okay, I've got some free time later, I should go to the gym. It's, okay, maybe I don't want to go to the gym, maybe I don't want to exercise, but I know to reach my goals and to be the best me that I can be, at the very least, I should probably do some stretching. I should probably take care of my body. It's, just a little thing that I might not necessarily want to do, but I'm truly loving myself by knowing, okay, well, my hamstrings aren't going to be tight. My shoulders are going to feel more relaxed. I'm not going to feel as tense. And it makes my day and my life easier by taking a little bit of time out and loving myself by doing things that are genuinely good for me.
I feel like self-love has looked like, for me, something similar, like doing the little things that, like, aren't necessarily, like, things you want to do. Like, lately for me, self-love has looked like tidying up around the apartment more frequently.
Like the dishes?
Like the dishes, no. I've done more dishes this week than I typically do.
It's because I'm employed now.
Yeah, you went to the office and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do the dishes now. But anyways, but, like, keeping things more organized, and because it's so easy to just, like, throw a hoodie on the bed or whatever, but, like, taking that extra step to hang it up, or, like, keeping the bathroom clean, or, like, for me, I feel like when I'm not doing great or loving myself the best, it's very visual because things get messy, and that's not loving you either when I let things get messy, since we share space. But, like, last week, I didn't put any of our socks away, and I just left them all mismatched in a laundry bag, or in a laundry basket. And then we just did laundry today, and I felt like my act of self-love today was matching the socks and putting them away as soon as they were done being washed and dried. And that's so silly and simple to say, but, like, that was my healthy way of showing self-love today. Because I know that that is an action that was, like, it wasn't serving me in the moment, right? Like, who wants to, like, sit down and match a bunch of socks? But it's serving me for the rest of the week. I'm like putting my future desires ahead of my present desires, because my present desires were like, oh, I want to, like, finish the podcast outline, I want to, like, make a tea, and then I want to sit down and do the podcast. But nope, I had to take an extra 5 minutes. Oh my goodness, how horrifying, to do something that'll make the rest of my week easier.
I think that's probably the best definition of self-love. Taking actions in the current time that represent your future self's best interests.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because it is very difficult to, even when it's you who is going to be benefiting, it's difficult to take some of those actions that will make future you happy. Like, I've seen some influencers talk about closing the kitchen at night, and it's something that I've always wanted to, like, get into a better habit of doing, but it's not easy to want to do the dishes at 10:30 at night because you don't want to wake up. And it's not even when there's a lot of dishes. It's like, it's just 2 plates and 2 cups from dinner.
But I just want to go to bed.
But I just want to go to bed, guys. I'm so tired.
So you're the one talking about doing the dishes?
Yeah, I am talking about doing the dishes.
Okay.
Because this week, I don't know if you've noticed before going to sleep, I didn't do it last night, but that's because we had nothing to do today. But, like, when I wake up at whenever it is that I wake up and I see that the sink is empty, it's just such a great feeling. Like, we don't have a dishwasher, so you have to go out of your way to do the dishes. And it's like an act of care for me the night before to clean up the kitchen so that in the morning it's a more pleasant experience to make breakfast and to make a tea and to sit and eat before I have my day.
The dish analogy works for everything, doesn't it?
The dish analogy has been brought up in almost every single one of our podcast episodes. So if you are not tired of us talking about the dishes, stay tuned for next week where we talk about the dishes. But yeah, I think that's just, yeah, I like how you put it, Sam. Like, self-love is taking actions in the present out of love for your future self. I think that's how, similar to how you put it.
Yeah, I think that was a bar. I'll start quoting myself.
Yeah. So that, and then being more neutral to yourself. Like, it's just changing your internal dialogue. Like, for me, another way that I feel like I can show healthy self-love is not by being like, I have bad acne. It's just, I have acne. And I'm so bad at taking away that adjective at the beginning that brings a negative connotation, because acne in itself is just that. It's just acne. Everybody has acne. I think, like, what, 0.01% of the population doesn't have acne?
Probably, yeah, that sounds about right.
I think I was Googling it the other day because I'm a little obsessive with it. But shifting it from, like, my acne is so bad to just, I have acne. This just is what it is. Has helped me a little bit with my mindset, because I feel like my ability to do that 2 years ago was non-existent. And if I had, like, one pimple, I was like a wreck, you know, and now I've got way more, and I'm like, some days I'm like, oh man, I wish it didn't look like this, but it's not ruining my whole day. Like, I went about my day in public and stuff and didn't wear makeup today, and it's just like, yeah, I'm just a person existing. Because it's almost a little prideful to think, like, everybody's looking at me. Oh my goodness, they're all looking at me because I've got bad acne. They're all going to think I'm ugly.
It's like presenting in front of the class. You think everyone's watching you present, but what do you do when other people are presenting? You're on your phone. You don't care. You're just ignoring. Unless you have to ask questions. But imagine back in high school, some other kid is presenting. You're not watching them present. You don't really care. That's what everyone else is kind of like when you're just walking around. It's not all eyes on you. You're just another person going about your day.
And that's so freeing. It's like, thinking about yourself less is so freeing, because how much energy was I spending when I was so caught up in, like, oh my gosh, everybody's staring at me. Oh my, it's just ruining my mood, and it's not putting me in the best position to serve other people when I'm so self-centered. And it's not self-centered in like a I'm great, I'm fantastic way. It's self-centered in like the, oh, I just don't feel confident today. Like, and you're gonna have those days, but I think lessening the highs and lessening the lows and bringing you to that neutral. I'm getting repetitive, but like, I'm passionate about it, okay?
I'll get more repetitive. I think emphasizing the grammar behind it. You're not thinking less of yourself, you're thinking of yourself less. The grammar is really important there. You're not lowering your self-esteem. You're not bringing yourself down. You're simply acknowledging that you are not the center of everyone else's world, so you shouldn't worry about everything like you are.
Yeah, because even when you're having negative self-days and super positive self-days, both of those extremes are taking the focus off of God, and it's putting it onto yourself and making yourself the center, because you're shifting just having a healthy self-image into self-inflation, whether that's negative or positive. It's not just like, I'm so great, it's also I'm so bad. Both of those can be prideful in a way, because you're putting yourself, like, you're focusing way too much on yourself. And I'm saying you, but I'm really saying me, because, like, I'm the problem. No, and you're the problem, Sam. We're both the problem. But with self-neutrality, you can have an awareness of your strengths and an awareness of where you fall short in any aspect, and not have it run your life. And I think that's the freeing part about biblical self-love, is by keeping God as your center and not inflating yourself negatively or positively. You are so free to do literally whatever else. Whatever else.
I agree. I think that really summarizes self-love in a nutshell from both a secular and biblical kind of stance. Absolutely.
We really hope that you enjoyed our chat today on self-love. It was a little bit of a shorter episode, but you know who you are. You're requesting us to shorten the episodes. So anyways, next time on Two Trees in a Pod, in honor of March being Women's History Month, we are going to start off the month by honoring some impactful women from the Bible through mini dives into their stories, how God set them apart, and what we can learn from them now. We hope you have a great week, stay blessed, and see you next time.